Welcome to the Well Aware podcast. In this special Women's History Month edition, host Dr. Lauren Grawert, Chief Medical Officer at Aware Recovery Care, sits down with Dr. Humaira Siddiqi, a psychiatrist and distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. Together, they explore powerful strategies women can use to prioritize their own well-being while navigating the demands of both personal and professional life. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Well Aware podcast. I'm Dr. Lauren Grawert, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Medical Officer here at Aware Recovery Care. And today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Humaira Siddiqi, who's a colleague, a mentor, a great friend of mine. Dr. Siddiqi also happens to be a board-certified psychiatrist who has been recognized as a top doctor by Washingtonian Magazine for 7 years and in Northern Virginia Magazine for 9 years. Dr. Siddiqi served as the chief of psychiatry and later the regional medical director at Kaiser Permanente of the Mid-Atlantic, where she managed over 800,000 members across the Washington, D.C., the Maryland, and the Virginia area. She has held numerous faculty positions, including clinical faculty at St. Elizabeth's Hospital Psychiatry Residency Program, clinical assistant professor at psychiatry at Penn State, most recently, faculty at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and a clinical assistant professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine. She is also recently founded Kismet Psychiatry and Wellness, which is a psychiatry outpatient practice, expanding their services into integrative psychiatry as well as addiction management. So we're so honored to have you here, Dr. Siddiqi, to talk more about women in leadership positions and balancing work-life balance as a female. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Grawert. It's a pleasure to be here today.
It's so nice to have you. I know in your daily life as a psychiatrist, a lot of what you do is helping other patients navigate difficult situations and also helping to manage and grow a sense of self-worth. Today, in honor of Women's History Month, we're going to be discussing some of the challenges that everyday women face and how to handle them gracefully or as gracefully as possible. And I'm curious for you, managing your own practice and holding all of these numerous faculty appointments that you have, tell us a little bit about what it's like to juggle multiple responsibilities. We know that many women feel the pressure to do it all. How do you work to set work-life boundaries, and how do you maybe take some of those lessons and help instill that with some of our patient population?
Dr. Brown, I'm going to give you a lesson that I learned many years ago. And I don't want to say I learned it the hard way. I learned it the right way. And that was through experience and through going through the fire. When I finished medical school and I made a decision, really quite by accident, to have my kids and then progress on to my practice, I kind of took a career hit, which I thought I was taking at the time, to have kids first and then dive back into medicine. And so when I went back into residency and I had very young children at the time, I was juggling a lot as a resident, and those residency hours. My husband was traveling globally, so I was very much a single parent. And I learned that I couldn't actually accomplish things unless I reached my hands out and asked for help. And I think as women who are particularly self-sufficient and independent, and we're very strong, we are so accustomed to doing things on our own and being so efficient that we don't do that. And what I came away with is that while some of my friends were already in practice while I was a stay-at-home mom, and that is the toughest job in the world, I would even say harder than being a physician. I realized I got a chance to experience both being a mom and then later on being a career mom. And it occurred to me that if I came to peace with something, which now has become my mantra, I could get things done. And that is that you can have everything you want in life, just not all at the same time. And so the idea of juggling really means that you're trying to have it all at the same time. And I had to make the choice to say, I'm not going to try to do it all at the same time, but I am going to stay true to my values, my intentions, and my goals. And that what I had to do was make a plan to do things. Where I am now, I could not have imagined that I would have landed where I am now 20 years ago when I started my career. But because I stayed true to that motto, that mantra, that belief system, you can have everything you want in life, just not all at the same time.
I love that. I love that. And so it sounds like another big piece I'm pulling out of what you said was having the ability to ask for help from others when you need it. Talk more about that. I think that you're spot on there. A lot of
Yes, yes.
self-sufficient men are reticent to do that. And talk more about kind of the importance of that and maybe even some examples.
I'll tell you where that kind of comes from. It comes from knowing your identity. It also knows that when you know your limits, then only then can you set boundaries on others. A lot of times we misunderstand that I am capable of something, and therefore we base our limits based on what we're capable of doing. But your capability can be really vast. And if that's your limit, you're going to overextend yourself.
Mm,
Obviously, we are capable of doing many things, but we need to set the limits just shy of that so that we have some slack. We've got to have a buffer for it. And then recognize that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And that's where you've got to ask for help because you've got to build in that slack in your own personal system. Asking for help doesn't mean that you're going to owe someone something, doesn't mean that they're going to owe you something. You'd be surprised. The help that I got was actually from a neighbor, and this is years ago. And she was from Ghana. And she was, I almost say I learned so much from her. I call it Grandma School of Medicine. And I would go over to her place, and she would help me on so many things with my kids when I kind of didn't know what to do. Or if I knew what to do and I just wasn't doing it right, asking for help, recognizing your limitations, recognizing even when I was in residency, asking for help. I asked for help from my directors, and we think that it's a sign of weakness that we don't have competency or that we're leaning too heavily or that maybe we're taking advantage of something. And that's simply not true because everyone around you does want you to succeed, but you have to want that for yourself and you have to be very reasonable about what those limits are. When you know your own limits, that doesn't mean based on your capability or ability. It means how much can you stretch yourself before you know this is not sustainable? Then you'll know when to set boundaries on others and what they can ask of you. And when you've got a nice balance of your limits, then you'll know how to set boundaries on others. You'll have a very balanced life, knowing that you're making choices, not sacrifices, on what you want to do and how you can do it. And you won't burn out and you won't feel like you're juggling.
I love that idea of distinguishing between what you're capable of and what you reasonably can do long term to prevent burnout. I've never thought about that distinction, but you're right. There's a big gap there between what somebody is capable of and maybe what is a healthy amount every day. So it's true. You mentioned being a mom. So we're both moms. We've both at times been juggling kids, professional travel. Talk a little bit about, I think that there's such a prevalence of mom guilt. I know women who they feel guilty when they're working. If they're away from their kids, they feel guilty if they're traveling. They even feel guilty if they are giving themselves self-care time. And it almost seems very uniquely female. Not to pick on my husband, but I can't think of the last time he had dad guilt over going to go around to golf. Why do you think it's so uniquely female, and what can women do to cope and support each other when that creeps in?
I really believe that a lot of it is how we are socialized, and that is a global phenomenon. That is not a Western or an Eastern thing. It's global. We are socialized differently. We are socialized to accommodate. We are socialized to palliate. We are socialized to take care. Men are socialized in different ways as well, and they protect and they do a lot of things. And there's crossover. In my home when my kids were little, I was a little more of the dad, and my husband was actually kind of the mom when he would come home. But the logistics was really all on my shoulders. I really was a single parent, so I kind of had to be both in one. And I found that mom guilt is there. I remember my very first day on the ICU rotation when I was in residency, and I remember trying to like get out early, and that was my older son's first day of school. And what parent doesn't want to drop their child off on the first day of school? And I missed it.
Hmm.
And it gnaws at me. My son is 23. He doesn't care. But it's my memory to hold, and it's my guilt that I feel. So how did I kind of reconcile that? And I had to go through a process. And really what it came down to was understanding what my values were. And my values will change over time. But I had to benchmark that, and I had to understand it's an emotional inventory. Your values are an emotional inventory. And I had to figure out what my identity was. And the issue is that many of us as women, we gauge our identity based on our utility.
Mhm.
Whether the utility of your job, my value is my utility, and because it's gauging against my identity. Your value has to be your emotional compass, and you've got to keep that separately as your North Star. Your identity is your utility, but you've got to also include other things in there. So if your utility is your career, if your utility is, even when people say I'm a mom, they're really actually talking about the job they do as a mom.
Mhm.
They're talking about being a partner or a spouse. They're actually saying the job they do as a spouse. But you have to recognize what is your identity to yourself in that role outside of the utility. So when you benchmark your identity against your values, please remove utility from there. Benchmark it against what is your North Star. Make that be your compass. Because when you do it in that way, then you will find that your identity and your values will align and the guilt isn't so profound. The only difference between shame and guilt is that we have these rules in our mind of these rules of engagement. And when you bend those rules, it creates this sense of shame. And when you break those rules, it creates guilt. So understand what is this rule that may be really efficient and adaptive, but it's not working for you. And as a mother, you will have to make choices and not sacrifices. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the difference between a choice and a sacrifice. I eventually had to come to terms with sacrifice is when you want it all. It's the juggling act. And when you have to leave something behind, you really still are emotionally anchored in what you had to let go of. And so your mind is in two places, your emotions are in two places. A choice means this is right for me. This is the hardest thing to do as a woman. This is right for me. And what is right for me is going to be right for everyone else around me.
Mhm.
You're not abandoning those that you love. They're not going to be permanently damaged by it. In fact, the more you flourish, the more you will have that sense of well being. And a choice means this is the direction you're going, and you're not looking back and you're not putting your emotional energy into what you did not do. That is really how you plow forward. And then you have to pay it forward. So I can have everything I want, just not all at the same time. Because you will go to a place eventually where you'll have a lot more command of things in your life and you'll be able to give back. And that's where I get a lot of my fulfillment from is giving back. The
Mhm.
development is a hard road. You will have to make choices, but don't conceptualize them as sacrifices because that's what's going to hold you back. That's what's going to make you not want to progress. That's what's going to make you say, I don't deserve this promotion. I'm not going to ask for this raise because you're thinking of these things as I've got to sacrifice something to achieve something. If you
Mhm.
make it a choice, because that's what men do, make it a choice, it becomes something that is fueled by determination.
I love that. And, from my perspective on the mom guilt thing, I almost look at that, like when I feel mom guilt, as not so much a negative thing, but a positive reflection of how much I value my kids. And I try to tell myself, it's okay to have mom guilt, like acknowledge it, don't fight it, recognize it. This is a emotion that's a symbol of how much I value them. I'm just going to also remember that I value these other things. And so, in that way, instead of like fighting against it, kind of maybe embracing it and being aware of it and saying, like, it's okay that I feel like this. I love these people. This is a reflection of that. And I love myself too. So, it's okay to do these other things.
The linguistics of using the word and. Oftentimes people say, I love my kids, but I love myself more. I love this, but that. And the word but makes things separate. When you
Right.
say and you're putting it into your value system, I love my kids and I love this and I love that and I want this. Put it all on the table. Make your choices. Your identity can be different and changing. Your identity can change when you go to work in the morning and come home to your kids as it should, but your values are stable.
I love that. Yeah. You and I, as psychiatrists, work with a lot of men and women who struggle with depression. And we know one of the key symptoms of depression is not liking to do the things you used to like to do or not liking to do the things that help you feel better. And there's so many unrealistic standards when it comes to women, whether it be hair appointments, nail appointments, gym appointments, nutritionist appointments, teeth whitening. I could go on and on and on. So how do you counsel women who might be struggling with depression and don't feel like doing the things they used to like to do? How do you counsel them on that and help them find a balance of doing things that maybe are self-care things that are important to them, but don't live up to this unrealistic, idealistic beauty standard?
Oh goodness. If you saw what I looked like in residency, um, it, you have to let some things go and recognize that holding oneself up to a standard that is unrealistic is going to do just that. It's going to make one feel depressed. I saw a great sign once. Expectations are the blueprint for disappointment.
Mm. That's so true. So true.
Expectations are the blueprint for disappointment. So when we set expectations that are just not practical, we set ourselves up to being disappointed. There are days that you just shouldn't have an expectation that you've got to look your best.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that comes from catastrophic thinking, the anxiety that comes from being judged or being labeled, being misunderstood. And that can lead to a sense of failure internally. I never tell women, when you're so depressed that you don't get out and exercise. They can't exercise. My gosh, they wouldn't be in my office if they could. They can't go out and do things. But loneliness is another factor in that. Loneliness can really create a sense of isolation. And so being connected, and this comes from asking for help, can be very, very positive.
As we're starting to wrap up here, I have one more final question. As a woman in the mental health field, you've talked a lot about emotions so far, and you help patients carry their emotional burdens and find ways to lighten those burdens in different ways. I'm wondering how do you avoid burnout, acting both as a caregiver and then in your personal life, and also being this amazing experienced leader professionally? How do you balance, at least look for burnout? How do you avoid it? How do you do that? And how do you maybe teach those pearls to others?
One of the things that I do is make sure that I find something that is very fulfilling to me. Pick one thing, just one. Don't pick 5, don't pick 10. Pick one thing that you want to learn, whether that's an instrument, whether it's a hobby, whether it's someone that you want to spend time with. And what I would recommend is also make sure burnout, one of the biggest things with burnout is loneliness and isolation. So when an individual is not connected to something, whether it's a community, whether it's a spiritual place, whether it is with their children, whether it is with their spouse or friends, is that you have to make sure that you are unplugging from your obligations and doing things that have nothing to do with your obligations. And this doesn't have to be something expensive. This can be something very, very basic. I like to do gardening. I grow things. I talk to my plants, and it's a very progressive process that has a seasonality to it. I also have learned since the pandemic how to play the guitar. And I'm an adult learner, which means I take a lot longer to learn. But it's the discipline to myself that has allowed me to avoid burnout.
Mm-hmm. I was going to mention that if you didn't, that you are a phenomenal singer and guitar player. Phenomenal. So you have, but I like your idea of don't pick 10 things, pick 1 or 2 things, and maybe ideally even start with one that allows you to mentally escape from your stresses from the day. I like to watch Netflix at night. I'm not nearly as creative or industrial as you, but to me, I look forward to that at the end of the day. Like, oh, what show am I going to watch? And I've reflected on it. I think it's because I'm focused on something totally different, for that hour period of time. And for you, it's gardening or playing the guitar or singing and playing the guitar. So that's good. I hope our fellow female friends and women listeners are thinking about something that they really enjoy doing or something they might want to enjoy in the future. One thing I like about your guitar that you mentioned is that you started it as an adult. So,
Mhm.
if you're listening and you're thinking, gosh, I don't have anything I like. I don't have anything I'm good at besides being a mom or a philanthropic professional. It's never too late, I think, is what I would take from your guitar story. Think about what's one thing that you would want to learn to do. It can be really, really simple. So I love that. I love that you've started playing the guitar as an adult. And I don't know if you're a slow learner. I mean, just from listening to you, you might label yourself as a slow learner, but you certainly are a really sophisticated guitar player.
I took my time, and that was the key. Is I allowed, excuse me, I allowed myself permission to take time. Time is something that is so precious we don't have enough of. And so when folks say, I don't have the time for it, it really is about disciplining yourself for yourself. And
Mm,
that's where the guilt comes in. So when you remove that rule that everyone else comes first, put yourself first just for 30 minutes. Start at 30. And if that's too hard, start at 15. But discipline yourself to take care of yourself for that time that's just you. And you'll see you can grow it. You can
mhm.
grow it. And I love the fact that you like Netflix. And sometimes I'll binge watch that too.
Well, Dr. Siddiqui, thank you so much for coming on today, for sharing your insights with us. It's been such an honor to have you on the show and just hear your thoughts on life and your thoughts as it relates to women. For those of you watching, this is today's episode of the Well Aware podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, for spending your time with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. We're available anywhere you get your podcast. And lastly, happy Women's Month to all the ladies listening today. I hope you feel inspired to prioritize yourself after this, and remember you're not alone in the struggle. So with that, have a wonderful day. Happy Women's Month, happy March, and tune in next time.